Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third in our Creative Horizons series. We're very happy that you've joined us today for a discussion with Szabolcs KissPál, the Hungarian artist, and it will be moderated by Christian Viveros-Fauné. I want to first begin by thanking my collaborators, the Havighurst Center at the University of Miami in Ohio, and the Melikian Center at Arizona State University for collaborating with the Institute on Russia for this wonderful series. The format today will be a half an hour of discussion, of moderated discussion, followed by your questions. So we urge you all to submit your questions whenever you're ready. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to present our two speakers for today, beginning with our featured artist. I hope you were all able to view his wonderful video on our website. Szabolcs KissPál is a Hungarian artist based in Budapest. His main field of interest is the intersection of new media, visual arts, and social issues. He's currently an associate professor at the Hungarian University of Fine Arts in Budapest. His work has been featured in numerous international venues, including the Venice Biennial, the International Studio and Curatorial Program in New York, Apex Art New York, and the Stedelijk Museum and the Seoul International Media Art Biennale. Between 2012 and 2015, he engaged in various activist projects. His work examines the tensions and complexities of cultural and political life in post-communist Europe and the role of the artist in society. Our discussion with the featured artist, KissPál, today will be moderated by Christian Viveros-Fauné. He is editor-at-large at the University of South Florida's Contemporary Art Museum, where he's been since 2018. He has curated numerous exhibitions at CAM and elsewhere, and is the author of several books, his most recent being Social Forms, A Short History of Political Art, that was published by David Zwirner Books in 2018. Christian was awarded the Kennedy Family Visiting Fellowship in 2018, a Creative Capital Warhol Foundation grant for short form arts writing in 2009. He was named art critic in residence in the Bronx at the Bronx Museum in 2011, and has lectured at Yale University, the Pratt Institute, and Amsterdam's Rietveld Academy. He was the art critic for the Village Voice from 2008 to 2016. It gives me great pleasure to introduce them now. Thank you.
Thank you, Golfa. Thanks very much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Szabolcs, for inviting me to have this conversation with you. We have a short time to cover a lot of material. I just want to do a mini sort of framework-like introduction to our Q&A. But I think we're going to have a significant amount of fun. I say oddly because when you consider some of the seriousness of the subject matter, you might think that there's not much to smile at. In any event, we're here to talk about Szabolcs. He's an artist who works with politics and history. You might say that's his métier, specifically with Hungarian politics and history, but I think in a way that you'll find has profound echoes for people living outside of Middle Europa, which is his specific point of interest. And I'd venture to say for people living all over the world today. He's made a rather large and complex work that he finished in 2016. The title of the work is From Fake Mountains to Faith, Hungarian Trilogy. Since 2016, it's been installed physically on numerous occasions in institutions around the world as a set of displays reminiscent of, among other things, I don't know, a city museum like the Museum of the City of New York, which is some miles from where I'm speaking to you from in Brooklyn. That is, it's been exhibited as wall-mounted objects, projections, material in vitrines, and as a narrative that includes text, objects, and still and moving images that provide a history of a place, or in Slavos' case, a counter history, or even a counter mythos that turns out to connect rather intimately a lot of counterfactual myths and ideas we have been hearing about, or ones that are similar to the kind of counter myths that we've been hearing about in this country. I should point out immediately that From Fake Mountains to Faith also lives continuously on the World Wide Web at fromfakemountaistofaith.eu. I would encourage all of you watching now to go ahead, dial up the website in a window and maybe thumb through it as we talk. Welcome, Szabolcs.
Hello.
Listen, let's dive right in because essentially we've got like a half an hour, 35 minutes before we take questions. So let me just sort of ask you what impelled you to make an artwork in the format that you did, in which a format that you've called research-based docufiction. And while we're at it, why don't you explain to us what docufiction is?
Well, the docufiction is a mixture of documentary materials and some fiction. In this case, there could be different proportions, you would mix them, but in my case, it's about, let's say, 90%, 10%. So the fictional part is rather narrow in it. Yeah, that's the docufiction. And like the format of it developed in some time. Actually, it took quite long. Between
4 years, right? Or longer?
Yeah, 4 years. From which like 1.5 years was intensive research.
Right.
And actually, so that's served as a base. So for that reason, I would call it research base, because I had to research a lot actually throughout these historical materials, archival materials, media, all kinds of media content, and so on. Yeah.
Right. So that's a research aspect of it. Let's like weigh in on the title just briefly. So From Fake Mountains to Faith, what are you alluding to when you're mentioning the fake mountains and the faith?
So we are speaking about the trilogy, and which has 3 parts, and actually the first and the third part would refer to the fake mountains and respectively to the faith. The fake mountains, it is about a man-built mountain in the Budapest Zoo, which has a very specific history, and the faith, it is actually the political religion as a faith. And so in between these 2 points, I try to tell actually the story how the new nationalism as an ideology has been invented in Hungary, actually in the interwar period. And I was using Hungary as just referring back to your introduction, for which I thank you. So I've chosen Hungary for short because I know it quite well. But on the other hand, I've chosen it because as a kind of case study, actually,
Right.
because it's like it's a universal thing. Yeah.
Because you were not born in what today is Hungary. You were born in what today is Romania, but
Romania. Yeah, exactly. So that's also as the whole interwar period and all the, let's say, ideological developments that took part in the interwar period, which are being somehow replicated now, I would say. In this period, this whole issue around Hungary losing some of its territories has been a very important issue. I would say it is still somehow in the subconscious of the Hungarian society.
Because you were born in specifically in Transylvania, correct? Which
I was born in Transylvania, which is part of this one of these territories, which following the First World War has been accorded to other states.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I want to jump briefly to the gestation period for the work, right? Because you mentioned essentially you're making the work between 2012 and 2016, but I sort of want to get at what was happening around 2012, 2010, 2011 that led you to actually want to make this work in the first place. What was happening in Hungary? What was happening in the world? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Clearly, you're looking at Hungary as a case study. It's not that, you know, this is a situation unique to Hungary. There are unique elements to what's happening in Hungary, but I think your argument is that it's something that affects any number of other countries.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is a kind of, I would say it's a standard developed by Hungary, actually starting from 2010. When in Hungary, a kind of a different government came to power, which was called Fidesz. It's a complicated, their ideological background, it is quite complicated, but by now they are Christian nationalist, kind of pretty much right government. And so they came to power in 2010. And then they started a very, very radical transformation of the entire Hungarian economy, society, legal kind of set and everything. And so throughout this transformation, there were endless, very problematic kind of acts, against which, at the beginning, the people somehow, I wouldn't say revolted, but still there were critical voices and actions and so on, demonstrations and of that kind. And but in this whole period, actually, this activity pretty much ceased. At the beginning, I've been also
you were one of those voices. You were one of the people who was involved in protesting.
Yeah, so that's between 2012 and 15. I've been very active in this field. I was an establishing member of several groups that were quite visible in this, let's say, fight against the transformations. And and in 2000 and by the 2015, 16, so actually all this, let's say, protesting scene got very much exhausted. And the transformation started to stabilize itself to such an extent that all of us, we were involved in these movements. We just realized that whatever we do, it just goes on.
It was unbreachable.
Yeah.
Well, you described, I think in the video that's up on the USF website, that there was a period actually where you stopped making art and you basically threw yourself into activism.
Yeah, about years maybe.
So clearly at that time, you didn't think art was up to the challenge of addressing, major political issues or major political change. But then it did. So what convinced you otherwise?
Well, actually, the history of this piece we are speaking about starts in 2012. So I created actually a kind of first version of one part of the trilogy in 2012. This was before I started investing all my time and energy into activism. So I had this piece partly done. That's been the moment, as you were asking about. I kind of came up with this docufiction as a format. Before I haven't been doing anything like that. Yeah, and then I put it aside for about 3 years and 3.5 years, and then I came back to it. Well, on one hand, because we just got exhausted, I kind of stopped actually being involved in activism actively, like in a participatory way. And and then I applied for a grant in Germany, and the grant was about developing this particular video into a larger piece, and that's what happened. So I moved to Germany for a few months, and I worked on this piece.
Is there something you thought at the time or think now, after the entire process is basically passed, you've made the work, you've trotted the work out, it's been in multiple, you've installed it in multiple institutions, and many people have looked at it online and in presentations like the one you're giving. Is there any point at which you said to yourself, you know, there's either, again, before or after, that there's something that art can do that straight out political activism couldn't do, at least according to yourself as a maker?
Well, I mean, if I understand well your question, I would say that, yeah, I don't believe that this piece, yeah, it is doing more than the activist activity could lead to. It's just simply, I think at this point, it seemed to me more useful, actually. So when, yeah, when we kind of stopped with this very active involvement in the everyday kind of activism, many of my friends, they turned to pedagogical projects, which kind of because that's something that is left to you, right? So you are working on a long term, and you say, okay, then at least I kind of try to educate some people to be sure that there will be some kind of normal people in 10 years' time. Right, and I kind of decided to go into this work, also because of the reason that I believe that this work has a pedagogical aspect in a way, and so there was a book published with the piece, a trilingual book. And I always call this book something in between a documentation of an exhibition and a history book as well. So I consider it to some extent a pedagogical project. I
can definitely see the connection between that and pedagogy.
Yeah,
very close in your project, and particularly in this one. Let's just sort of like define some terms here. What is a liberal democracy, and why is it important to the Hungarian case study?
Well, the liberal democracy, it is a political term actually coined at the end of 80s, as far as I remember, and which applies to democratic societies where the democratic let's say institutions are more like formal, so they don't work for whatever reasons. So it looks like a democracy, but is not. In fact, that's the I would say the most visible kind of aspect of the illiberal democracy. It is also, it has to do with with the weakening of the civil society, weakening of the legislative power in some sense, and executive power taking over and so on. So it's a complex sort of combination of different criteria. To some extent, it could be called a liberal democracy. Even Myanmar used to be one of the first examples of that, but I don't know, the contemporary Turkey and Russia, and I think these countries are all. So you have elections. It seems that everything is like fine, but in fact, it is very far by being defined.
Yeah, you mentioned Singapore as sort of like the one of the older case studies, but clearly I think in the last decade or so we've encountered a growth of illiberal democracies. India possibly even.
Yes.
Right? And which is a lot of people under that kind of regime. This might be again a good place to define something else: irredentism. Which is the according to the dictionary, the political popular movement in which members claim, usually on behalf of a nation, and seek to occupy territory that they consider lost or unredeemed, right, based on history or legend. Maybe this is a good place to talk about the Treaty of Trianon, which is what happens in Hungary after World War I. And it featured very prominently in your work.
Yeah. Yes, I think I made already a reference at the beginning of my speech or discussion on it. Right after the First World War, the Trianon Treaty was the peace treaty which actually closed the war for Hungary and the Allied power between them. And it's been a very disadvantageous peace treaty, as a result of which the former Hungarian kingdom has been left with about 1/3 of its territory and also population. So, so it's been quite a dramatic kind of historical event, which has its effect throughout the interwar period of Hungary. And the irredentism actually was the movement which was started right after this peace treaty. And actually it started even before the peace treaty has been already signed. And yeah, it kept on getting stronger and stronger by the end of the 30s, the beginning of 40s, and actually led Hungary or drove Hungary into the Second World War and into the Holocaust, the Hungarian Holocaust as well. So it's like so this is the historical path of Hungary that went through from the end of the First World War and the Second World War. Yeah.
And those claims feature really prominently in Amherst Geography and the Rise of a Fallen Feather, which are these 2 long videos that you have,
yeah,
that form part of the work. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of make reference on this because it is still it's a tabooized, to some extent, tabooized sort of issue, but still very, so it is very controversial. It is very much, to some people, this offers this kind of vision of nostalgic, of the nostalgic golden kind of age of Hungary, the greater Hungary they call the one before the treaty. So it's it leads to it is mostly it's kind of in the argument system of the far right, but also the moderate right. Even now, it is quite irredentist, to put it like that. And yeah, in many, like, just let me give you one example, like on the Hungarian parliament, I think it's been the first or second year of after this change in 2010, and the new government took off. So there were 2 flags, 2 banners, the Hungarian one and the European one, since Hungary it is member of the European Union. And with the new power, they took off the European flag and they replaced it with a flag of a certain, let's say a Transylvanian flag, to make it easier. Yeah, as a kind of statement. Okay, so that's how it started. And actually, I think it's been one of the very first laws that the new parliament with the Fidesz majority kind of brought. If I'm right, it's been in 2010. And this law was about designating a certain date, the date of the signature of this treaty back then in 1920, as a kind of date of national, how you would translate, national unity, something like this. Okay. Which is being celebrated or remembered since then.
I was actually, well, I guess somewhat surprised, not too surprised, once I thought about it, to see you reference in your video the stab in the back myth, which, by the way, has been in the American press quite a bit. Most of us Americans have no clue what the stab in the back myth is, and we couldn't possibly pronounce the German version of the which is Dolstombenglede, I think, something like that. But in any event, it was a very important set of conspiracies that took hold in Germany after World War I, which basically characterized the defeat of Germany as, again, a conspiracy by the left and Jewish interests, right?
Yes.
So the same thing happened in Hungary?
Yes, actually, this I would say this ideological element has been taken over fully by the Hungarian sort of political consciousness. Also because of the fact that at the end of the First World War, it's been a very kind of hard time for Hungary, for sure, because of the World War, and because of the fact that Hungary lost. And it's been like there were two revolutions, one after the other one. And in 1919, actually before the Treaty of Trianon, there was for 3 months and a few weeks, there was proclaimed the so-called Hungarian Soviet Republic. And so it's been a short-lived kind of political system. And even in the rhetorics now, it is one kind of reasons why Trianon happened, because the so-called communists took over, and for sure, the kind of folklore says that there were many Jews among these communists. So it's like everything comes together. So it's the same sort of methodology.
Right. Well, I don't know if you see the connections to the U.S.'s similar situations, both sort of the lost cause of the Confederacy, for example, right, which we continue to sort of hear about now, and the issues of white supremacy, and this more recent stolen election myth that's essentially sort of come from the American right. But those connections seem quite clear to me.
Frankly, I didn't know about this American reference, but thanks for mentioning it.
Yeah. Now, as I mentioned before, From Fake Mountains to Faith has been installed 11 times, right? And again, it's been seen many more times, and people have heard about this artwork from conversations like the one we're having. But I'm curious, and I don't know, and I decided not to Google it before asking you. Has it been shown in Hungary?
Yes.
It has.
Yes, it's been shown in Hungary. It was not the first installment of the installation. I think it's been the third one. Yes, because in Hungary, when I just mentioned that in the past 10 years, some very radical transformations took place in all the fields, but including the culture. And practically one can say that the whole kind of contemporary culture has been marginalized and pushed aside and so on. And then like everyone from the field and all the institutions have been transformed and so on. And actually, because of this, some young professionals, they started a kind of free biennial, which is called the Off Biennial. And actually, when I was invited to be part of it, both for the first and the second one, but during the second one, I managed to show this piece with their help, actually. And it's been a wonderful kind of coincidence that we were hosted by, the exhibition, for sure, it hasn't been hosted by any kind of official institution. But there is an institution of research of political history, and they are like maybe 200 yards from the parliament. So the windows of the exhibition room, you could see the parliament in its whole kind of grandeur. So so it's been a perfect location for the piece.
Did you successfully fly under the radar of official culture, or were you reprimanded, or what happened when you showed the work?
Well, as the old biennial, it's an independent kind of initiative. Yeah, I didn't need to to make any efforts to go through, because the old biennial actually shows whatever they want to show. So let me add here that Hungary, the Hungarian kind of political and even social situation, it is very bad at the moment. But still, like, if you're an artist, theoretically you can say whatever you want. So it didn't happen yet that artists would be brought to trial or jail or whatever because what they feel or believe. Yeah.
No, so not like Russia yet. A little like Cuba used to be, because Cuba used to allow the biennial, among other sort of cultural spaces or institutions, to allow, it was just enough steam, just enough steam to escape from the culture to.
Yeah, but I agree that's not yet. So
right.
It might.
Right. We're at 2:35, and I've got plenty of questions, but Golfo, do we have any questions coming in from the public, from the audience?
Yes, Christian, thank you so much. And Szabolcs, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. We do have a question from Stephen Norris, who is head of the Havighurst Center at Miami University. And he says, thank you so much, Szabolcs, for taking part in this series, and to you, Christian, for moderating the discussion. When watching your amorous geography video, I was struck by how you characterized the current Hungarian approach to the past as one, quote, blinded by nostalgia, unquote. At another point, you referred to the current use of national symbols as, quote, nostalgia freed from guilt, unquote. Can you talk a little more about how nostalgia operates in contemporary Hungary, how the Orbán regime has harnessed it, and the dangers of blind nostalgia?
Yes, thank you very much for the question. I think the nostalgia, on one hand, it works like everywhere in the world. For instance, in America, what you mean by "Make America Great Again" is the same. It's exactly the same nostalgia that the Fidesz operates with. Actually, even the slogan, it's almost similar. The slogan would be translated something like "We should be brave enough to be great again," or something like that. And this nostalgia, in the case of the Hungarian contemporary, let's say, political discourse, it refers on one hand on the pre-Trianon Hungary, the Greater Hungary, and on the other hand, it refers to the pre-communist kind of Hungary. Because according to this narrative, actually the continuity of the state stopped in 1945 with the installment, 1947 more precisely, with the installment of the communist regime in Hungary. And so this is the kind of this double nostalgia, actually the actual political discourse kind of combines. And so what makes it blind? I think it's somehow some sort of incapacity to interpret and to understand the historical experiences altogether. I think that's the main problem. by by manipulating, I would say, the collective memory, which has been a very important, let's say, objective of the Fidesz government, to build up a kind of totally new memory, historical memory. And actually, that's what makes needed the kind of fictitious, to include fictitious parts in it. And for that reason, I'm doing a counter fiction to these fictions. But yeah, I think that's what makes it blind. This kind of incapacity of understanding the past, and the activity of covering some parts of the past and transforming the collective memory. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that it. I mean, I think I'm just going to repeat what you just said, but it's blind because as a narrative, it's structured in such a way that it beats all other narratives, including reason and science, right? And again, that's a way in which the experience in Hungary basically connects straight back to what's happening all over the globe, but certainly what's happened in this country, right? It's inconvenient to sort of reason through things, and also inconvenient to take science as at its word. Therefore, and also easier to sort of accept a series of quote unquote established truths. But I want to go back to what you just mentioned. The idea that you essentially are almost fighting fire with fire. Am I saying this right?
Yeah, to some extent you might say that. Yeah,
right.
To some extent you might say that.
There's a counter. There's a mythos.
Fiction,
exactly, and you're providing a counterfiction.
Yeah. Yes, because I don't know. That's been somehow a product of my work, the way how I was working on this piece. At some point, I just realized that to formulate, let's say, a straightforward criticism, which I've been doing actually for many years. Yeah, in many situations, it just cannot be powerful enough, because you don't have the media, you don't have the means, and so on. So, but if you choose, let's say, more subversive tactics, and that's what you could call like fire with fire, or like the counter fictionalizing. I think you have better chances to to somehow to touch to some points, or on some points. Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? You describe how you do this archival research, you investigate these issues historically, and then you incorporate your historical research, but then you have a small element, a small fictional component to your work. How do you decide what elements you feel free to be creative, fictitious with, and what elements you feel like you absolutely must adhere to the archival record?
Yeah. It is. It's always case to case. I would say. Practically, I try to keep as many kind of real facts as possible. So I I introduce fiction only when it's needed, either for kind of narrative reasons, or for dramatic reasons. And actually, as you mentioned, for instance, the amorous geography, actually one might say that within the amorous geography, there is only one fictitious kind of information, which for sure generates a few more, but actually it's only one because of dramaturgical reasons, namely that on this fake mountains, some families from Transylvania were kind of living, or were shown as in the zoo, like an ethno zoo, and so on. So it is it's like very rarely it happens for me to establish some fictitious connections between different things in order to make the narrative a bit smoother. The state, usually these are not, or the majority of them, they are not statements. They are, I don't know, attributes or some kind of secondary things.
We have a question here from a student, Alex Adams at Miami University, and he asks, would you consider yourself a Hungarian or a Romanian? And does your birth in Transylvania impact how you address your work in the present?
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you for the question. I might start with the second one because that's easier to answer. Yes, definitely. As the fact that I was born and raised actually in Transylvania, for sure, it impacted to a large extent this particular work of mine. I must say that this is maybe my only work which has so much to do with where I come from. On the other side, like whether I consider myself Hungarian or Romanian, I might say that none. But I was raised and born in a Hungarian-speaking family, so I would rather consider myself Hungarian for sure. But yeah, that's the answer in short.
So we'll take. This will be the final question from the audience, and then I'll hand it over to Christian if he has one final question. What government policy was it that was at the center of your protest activity, and what caused the greatest rejection?
Mm-hmm. Well, there were actually, as I was more interested in the cultural field, and I could follow much more closely the developments within the cultural field. Actually, the cultural policy was, first of all, not the only thing, but that was which kind of fueled my anger. And so this cultural policy was about, it started with replacing, transforming the whole structure of the Hungarian institutional art, and placing on the top of it a very, let's say, conservative and nationalist sort of, I don't know, body, newly established body. It's a longer story, which is called the Hungarian Academy of Arts, and in a few years it became the kind of the most powerful institution in the culture. And first of all, I was revolted by the radicality and aggressivity of this transformation, but also by the direction of it. But this was only the culture, for sure. All the major institutions, management has been changed, and so on. And it's been a full and total kind of ideological takeover. And on the other hand, there were also other kind of processes, which like practically the destruction of the Hungarian constitution, which is a long story, but it's been totally taken over. The constitution itself rewrote by the Fidesz majority, which was absolutely very disturbing. There were, and also on the other fields, there was a total kind of the takeover started in the economy. There was a media law brought at the very beginning, which kind of created the path of taking over the media. And so it's like there were many things, but mostly I was acting against the cultural kind of transformations, and also I was active in the kind of issue of homelessness, because there were many laws coming out against the homeless people and so on. So things like this.
I do have a last question, Szabolcs. So, if we've defined that a large part of what you intend from Fake Mountains to Faith to do is to provide a counter narrative or counter fiction to the sort of almost totalizing larger cultural fiction of Fidesz and Viktor Orban. And here's the question. Can you point to similar counterfictions out there in the world that might have either inspired you or that you saw later that we might tune into? I wonder if there are any other points of counter narratives that you might hook us up with.
To put it frankly, I might not be able. There are, I mean, there are works of art which contain some kind of fictional elements in the same way, maybe, but yeah, it would be difficult for me to name any of them. I know that I've been suggested one, but to put it frankly, I didn't check it, and yeah. So in short,
do you remember what it was, right off the top of your head?
Not really. I think it was not that much political. It was, yeah.
I'm thinking of one. Do you know? There's a guy named Adam Curtis who's a documentarian.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Right. It's hyper-normalization, and he has something that's come out
recently.
Yeah. But your work reminded me very much of his work.
Yeah, I appreciate very much his work. So probably that's not by chance. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, good. Well, listen, I you know, it's been a total pleasure on my end. I hope everyone has tuned in properly. Thankfully, that atmospheric noise is now going away. But thank you so much for having me as your questioner. A real pleasure. Thank you, Golfo.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Szabolcs KissPál, and thank you, Christian Viveros-Fauné. This was a really wonderful discussion. Thank you again to the USF Contemporary Art Museum, especially Margaret Miller and Mark Fredericks. I hope that you will all look on our website, the USF Institute on Russia's website, for Szabolcs's video and the videos of other artists in our Creative Horizons series. I want to remind everyone that the Institute on Russia at the University of South Florida, of which I am the director, its mission is to advance knowledge and understanding of Russia and the surrounding region through interdisciplinary research, area studies, and global partnerships. And we hope that you'll continue to follow the work that we do in the Creative Horizons program and in others. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Christian and Szabolcs, and goodbye, everybody.